Okay, so an opinion or a perspective, rather, right, of why black people particularly gravitate to more Eastern media, right? And I'll say it like Asian media, be it kung fu films, anime, and even Bollywood and Nollywood, right? So let's just say media outside of the Western world, right? So we start with kung fu films and the 70s, right? Now, most black people in, whether they be in the West, in America or England or Europe, right, they understand a point of view like this, yeah, whether it's conscious or subconsciously. The rulers or the ruling class, right, and majority of the time are white, right? They're not black, right? So their media and their portrayal, their stories, their actors, their film and image is always going to pertain mostly to their core audience, which is white people, right? Now, and I think it's the Song of the South or something like that, right? But in one of the earliest ever films, yeah, that were filmed was racist, right? And it gave a perspective of black people that was negative, and it's been portraying them negatively ever since, right? In all forms of media, right? So a perspective is people look to, black people in particular will be looking for content that they can identify with outside of the Western point of view of who they are, right, and what they've been fed, right? So the most accessible and next logical step to outside of white media, white film, white cartoon, white perspective would be Asian, right? Because black people don't have their own media cartoons even to this day, right? It's very small amounts peppered in amongst all of the rest, right? So the most accessible kind of media that was just being allowed into the Western world in the 70s was Chinese and Japanese kung fu movie culture, right? That's why black people took to it so much, right? Here's this thing that's showing us a perspective outside of what we've been fed, right? And the reason why most of those kung fu films were so powerful and potent was because it was usually a commentary on overcoming oppression, right? So a school or a master will be challenged and their students and that will get mashed up, and you know what I mean, there'll be one group against another group, right? And it's usually the story of overcoming, right? That's usually the premise of most kung fu films, right? And the hero's journey in general. You come up against a problem and the solution is found, right? That is one of the most potent reasons why kung fu films in the East, right, were so taken on by black culture, right? And not just only the fact that Asian people were living amongst black people more and more, so the culture was seeping in, right? Seeping in. Whereas the outside world, right, the white media had a whole different perspective of what black people are and who they should be, right? So black people are looking for something that they can identify with outside of this negative portrayal, right, that has been put onto them. So there's that, right? Now, modern day, we are still the biggest consumers outside of Asia's primary target audience, which is Asians, right? And then their secondary target audience, which is the Western white world, right? So black people still identify more with anime and Asian cartoons and stuff like that, because like I just said, they are a portrayal, a storytelling outside of the white Western narrative, right? Now, even though the Asian world has a negative perspective on black people as well, right? They are more blatant with it, their politics. They are more blatant with it as you are other, right? And they don't pretend that you're not other, right? So you can accept that from them on face value. Whereas the Western white world likes to play nuanced politics, right? And spin narrative on who black people are according to them, right? And how they want to show black people. So yes, foundationally black people look to Asian culture, Bollywood and now Nollywood, right? Because there's more and more content coming out of Africa, which is great, excellent, right? But there's still a language barrier there, just like with the Asian world, right? But the Asian world's production and pushing of its product is more prominent, right? It's more and more prevalent, where they're even in their economy, right? It's bigger their entertainment is now bigger, right? The Bruce Lees and the Jackie Chans and the Yao Chan Fats and all of those guys, right? They no longer have to run away from Asia to the Western world to make their names big, right? They can stay in Asia and make big movies, big productions, right? They don't have to run to the West anymore, right? So their economy is growing and thriving even more. And black people are still very invested and interested in these stories and these portrayals because it's an external view on life that's not the Western white version, right? And you can look at this even a step deeper, right? Some people will say all cultures, all races originate from Africa anyway, right? So if you look at the Asian world, they have some of the oldest recorded history of their people, right? But they know that they come from Africans that have migrated, right? That's why the language and the names are so close to African languages and names, right? That's why that economical link is still kind of there, even though it's more tilting to the Asian power structure than the African power structure, right? But that connection is still there, right? Because Asia and Africa are essentially one, right? Just like the West is essentially one with Africa too, right? But because of racial constructs and economics that pertain to slavery and Jim Crowism and all of that kind of shit, because it's not, Europe is not exempt, right? Europe is the biggest perpetrator of slavery first and foremost, right? Both whites and blacks, right? So when you understand that, you understand why black people look more to Asian culture and anime and are primarily interested in that stuff, right? But the thing is, Asians don't know that yet. Maybe a few do, like people like Hideo Kojima and game makers and like that are more immersed within the culture, understand that black people have a very interesting stake in that world, right? People like that understand that, right? But the majority of Asia doesn't know that, right? And black people as individuals are still a mystery to most of them. That's why when you get a black person walking around in Japan or in China, it's like a shock. It's like, look, this is other, right? This is foreign, right? Although we are very immersed in their culture where we are, right? So that's just a perspective or a nuanced opinion on why black people appreciate Asian culture and media a lot more than is talked about, right? And there's subtle nuance to it that I would like to get into deeper and further, but just as a surface value, it's being able to identify with their stories and their narratives as an other, right, to the Western and white narrative of who black people are supposed to be, right? So it's just simple like that.